Excellent. Welcome, everyone. My name is Lee Humphreys. I am a professor in the Department of Communication, and I am director of the Cornell Center for the Social Sciences, QuIRI, the Qualitative and Interpretive Research Institute. We are so excited to welcome you all here today for our first seminar of the academic year. This is always such an exciting and vibrant community of scholars who come together to talk about and engage in discussions related to qualitative social science research. So today, we are going to be hearing from Dr. Gilly Leshed from Information Science. But first, I just wanted to reflect briefly. So last year, Dr. Trevor Pinch passed away, and he was one of the founding members of QuIRI. And I'll just add personally, he was a faculty mentor of mine when I started as an assistant professor here at Cornell. And he was actually incredibly central to the development of the QuIRI Innovation Award. And so today, so we named the award in his honor to both recognize his own methodological contributions to the field, but more importantly, I think to really celebrate his commitment to creative qualitative methods here at Cornell and really fostering an interdisciplinarity and a rigor and a creativity when it comes to research methods. And so I'm so excited to be able to introduce his partner, Christine Leuenberger, who's going to share a few words with us today.
Well, thank you so much, Lee, and the QuIRI Institute for putting this event on and giving us the chance to say a few words. I'm here, my daughter Annika is here, and she will also say a few words after me. And then Benika is here, but unfortunately she cannot join in audio because she is in a meeting herself, but she's there in the background. So thank you all, and thank you, Lee, in particular, for naming this QuIRI Innovation Award after Trevor. QuIRI epitomized everything that Trevor loved: qualitative social science, innovative, out-of-the-box thinking, and following sometimes the most obscure ideas passionately. He was very good at this. I met Trevor in 1988. And he had just landed his first sociology job at the University of York in England after having been unemployed for a while. He always told me a lot of stories about that. It was not easy as qualitative sociologists to get jobs in the 1980s in England. He had just left physics for sociology. And he always recounted the story of his physics professor at Imperial College telling him, "How could you do such a thing? How could you leave physics for sociology?" But of course, Trevor never looked back. That was Trevor. He was convinced he was on the right path, and surely he was. Trevor had a passion for human-centered analysis of the social world, whether it was videoing market traders at the York market, and he would often drag me along to these events. I could hardly understand the Yorkshire accent, or whether it was physicists. He always wanted to tell that human story. When he first came to Cornell in the early 1990s, where he had accepted a professorship in S&TS, soon after his arrival, he was invited to give a talk at the sociology department in Arts and Sciences. And he gave a talk about the sociology of science, only to be told by a colleague that you are not a sociologist. because apparently in order to qualify as a sociologist, you have to work on social problems. And sociology of science was not seen as a social problem. So that meant that some of the most interesting qualitative work across campus was at the time being done everywhere but the sociology department. It was not really until QuIRI was established that as qualitative social scientists, we felt we had a cross-departmental community of people equally committed to interpretive social science and to meaning making. So we finally now actually have a home on campus. And for being that home for us qualitatives, we and Trevor are most grateful to you, Lee, and the QuIRI community. Thank you so, so much. And now over to Annika.
Hi, everyone. It's great to be here and see so many familiar faces again and be back at Cornell virtually. I always miss being back at Cornell and the Cornell community. I also just wanted to thank Lee and all those at QuIRI for the work they do and for naming this award after my dad. I think he would have been really honored by this award. I remember when QuIRI started and my dad very excitedly telling me about this new institute dedicated to the qualitative and interpretive research methods, which I thought was really cool and wished more universities had something like this. I was looking back in my email and he would often email me from QuIRI seminars and tell me about who was presenting, what they were talking about, how he thought this and that was interesting, sending me a screenshot or something. He had a deep drive and curiosity to learn about all sorts of research and innovative methods and wanted to share that with all those around him. His passion for qualitative and interpretive methods inspired many of the students and myself to pursue these methods in our own work. So I just wanted to say a big congratulations to Dr. Gilly Leshed for your innovative work, and I'm excited to be here and learn more about it for this next hour.
Thank you both so much. It's really an honor to have you with us today. And I know you were with us before, right? In our various online seminars. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce this year's 2022 Trevor Pinch QuIRI Innovation Award winner, Dr. Gilly Leshed. Dr. Leshed is a senior lecturer and director of the MPS program in the Department of Information Science here at Cornell. Her teaching and research interests are in human-computer interaction and computer-supported cooperative work. She uses both qualitative and quantitative methods and technology design to examine how individuals and groups accomplish tasks and socialize, and the roles of information technology plays in these interactions. In particular, as part of her application for this award, Dr. Leshed described her qualitative user research and design methods class. So this is Info and Com 4400 and 5400. This class, which I'm excited to hear more about, innovatively incorporates qualitative social science methods and design methods into engaged and participatory training for students. We are so excited to be able to recognize this innovative and vital teaching that goes on as part of what it means to do qualitative methods. It's not just to do it as researchers, but also to teach others how to do that. And so with that, please help me in welcoming Dr. Gilly Leshed.
Thank you, Lee and Christine and Annika. Let me share my screen. Slideshow. Everybody can see that, right? Okay, so first of all, thank you so much for having me today. And it is such an honor to receive this award in the memory of Trevor Pinch. I had the honor to interact with him in the last 2 or 3 years on a research project that incorporated SNTS and technology design and architectural robotics and sound design. And the contribution of Trevor to that project was immense and interesting. And I was always been learning from him a lot. And so being able to have this award in his memory is really a great privilege for me and an honor. So thank you. So in this talk, I'm going to present, as Lee said, a way of teaching qualitative methods to students who are in a unique position of not being as much interested in research. So we come from the point of view of designing digital products. This is what I teach. This is what human-computer interaction is about. And so how do students move from this idea that they have in the world to actually creating this application or website that other people are eventually going to use and apply in their daily lives? In human and computer interaction, we usually follow what we call the human-centered design process, which includes multiple stages from user research to design, implementation, and evaluation. And this is what we teach students in the introductory human-computer interaction class. And we focus in our user research methods mostly on helping students develop skills for good interviewing skills. So they start with a baseline of user research methods, which is how to interview people so you know who they are, what are their needs, how do you best design for them. In the user research and design methods, we really focus on the first 2 stages of this design process, the user research and design. And these methods can incorporate both quantitative and qualitative methods. And in the class that I will present a little bit of the pedagogy of this class, I focus on the qualitative methods. Now, it's almost like a survey class. So you can see here the list of methods that are being presented to students, introduced to students. They're all taken from the human-computer interaction field or HCI field. They're advanced, so we assume that students already have some level of skill sets related to doing interviews, maybe surveys. And over the course of the semester, from top left to bottom right, those methods increase in complexity, both in the logistics of carrying them out, but also in the design philosophies that are behind them. A little bit of the student body composition to kind of get into like, why is this actually a difficult thing to do? So there are about 50 students in this class. It's taught in the spring, and about 70% of them are information science majors. The number of majors that you see in this bar graph is more than 50 because a lot of students, I realized, double major and triple major today. 20% of those students are also professional master's students. And most of them are seeking industry jobs in areas such as UI UX design, which stands for user experience, product design, or product management. So the big question is, how do you engage those industry job seeking students in qualitative research methods that are more academically oriented? And one way that I found effective to teach this, which I guess is the innovation in this case, is to offer the practical applications of these methods and how they are applied in product design oriented environments with hands-on activities to see how do you actually go and apply them while keeping the philosophies and the principles and the theories behind these methods true to the application. So we have, as I said, it's a survey course. So every week we cover one method. And in this method, we follow a similar structure every week. At the beginning of the week, students read 2 to 3 papers that kind of demonstrate the principles and some examples of how to apply these methods. And then in the weekly lecture, we talk really more about what is this method, where did it come from, what are some principles, what is the rationale, and look at examples from the HCI field about it. Then the practical part of this class is where we get to practice and apply and exercise the method in a weekly workshop that comes up later in the week. I'm going to show you two examples starting from participatory design. So the first example, participatory design, is a method that originated in Northern Europe and Scandinavia in the 1970s and 80s, when technologies started to permeate into the workplace, and a lot of organizations and academic institutions were interested in applying those democratic principles that Northern Europe and Scandinavia was trying to hold on to when those technologies are being introduced in the workplace. And so there were efforts to develop methods that actively involve all the stakeholders in the design process. This includes the end users, who are the workers who will actually use these technologies that are introduced to the workplace, but also designers and the software and hardware developers, people who are in charge of financing this, and other decision makers. This method also focuses mostly on bringing into the design process individuals, especially end users, who have been traditionally marginalized from this design process or have been seen as passive recipients of technology. Here's the technology, take it and use it. And so in the process, there also have been efforts to actively address issues of power dynamics and politics of design and communication gaps in the process, because different groups speak different languages. There is a power dynamics between who gets to decide what is being developed and designed and how. And these are being addressed as part of participatory design methodologies. And then on the ground, this comes with hands-on co-design activities to get end users, decision makers, business people, and so on, to get their creativity flowing to be able to contribute to the design process. What you're seeing here on the right is actually a co-design workshop that I carried out with a group of students. You see here 2 students from Cornell in Peru that we did with coffee cooperative technicians as part of an engaged Cornell project to develop cost of production calculators for coffee farmers in Peru. So it's something that students learn and can apply as part of their practical practice. All right, so some readings and lectures in this class look at how to situate participatory design in the historical context. What is it as a design theory, the fact that we want to actively get users to participate in the design process, empowering them, encouraging and respecting their skills, and addressing the political challenges in the design process. And we also learn about like the actual techniques that are being applied in participatory design. This may include brainstorming, when a lot of people are participating and deciding what is going to be developed, co-design workshops, and conflict negotiations when it comes to different political powers that are coming into play in the technology design process. All of these were developed as part of more organizational technology that is introduced to the workplace. Now, when we get to the workshop, what we want students is to learn and practice those skills with hands-on activities. How do you involve all the stakeholders in all stages of the design? How do you actually incorporate and address the politics of design in this process? How do you recognize that people are experts, and then using those visual, physical, and prototyping techniques to lower the barrier between what is called the user and the designer? So I'm going to actually walk you through the actual activity that we do in class. We start by having them team up in groups of 4, and they're given a design challenge. The design challenge last year was to make lemonade. Okay, so they were actually given lemons and water and sugar, and they had to try to revolutionize the process of lemonade making, and they're going to apply a participatory design in the process. Each team had 4 members, and they were instructed to choose roles between them, where each group member had a specific goal and a specific script that they were supposed to work by. So there was the lemonade making expert, the designer who wants to create an innovative product, the researcher whose role is to facilitate the process, and finally the manager, the person who's in charge of the budget and can control what is being bought and what isn't. So the next stage was to actually make lemonade, and each person was using their own role. The manager went to the TA's table to purchase the whatever they need to make lemonade. The expert was making lemonade and showing the designer how to do this, and then the researcher was trying to facilitate a positive environment, making sure that the expert is getting the equipment that they need, the supplies that they need, that the designer is learning from the expert, and that the manager is not taking over the entire process. After that happened, so the designer knew how to make lemonade, and now their job was to design something that will facilitate the lemonade making experience of the expert, but also not de-skill the expert. The whole idea was, how do you empower the expert to use their expertise? Again, they were given some supplies, in this case, foil and pipe cleaners and scissors. They had to purchase them, and they came up with some prototypes like the 3 that you're seeing here to make lemonade. After that, we got together to share the prototypes that everyone created and discuss. And here is where they take this fun experience where they were making lemonade and making prototypes and playing with Play-Doh to actually go take a step back and think, how does this relate to participatory design and to co-design activities? How did each person's role contribute to or hinder the design process? Looking at any kinds of communication gaps where the manager was taking over with the budget and the designer was forgetting that the expert needs to keep their skill as opposed to de-skilling them to make their life as efficient and as productive as possible, and addressing any power dynamics in the process. So this is the first example of participatory design. The second example that I will share is theater techniques for design. So in the readings and in lecture, we talked about how HCI design can actually be seen as a form of theatrical production. When designers create technologies for users and then users actually use them, there is some kind of prop use, there is some kind of an envisioned scenario which is designed as a script into products that are being designed. And so as part of this, thinking about how we can learn from theater techniques in HCI can broaden our way of how we're designing these products for users. So for example, we might use improvisation techniques to expand our creativity and innovation as designers. We might use a technique called bodystorming to empathize with our users and with scenarios of use. And finally, we could use a technique called user enactments to explore future opportunities for design and how those futuristic designs might impact social interactions. In the workshop, we actually get on the ground and actually practice this improv, the bodystorming, and the user enactments. The first part is doing an improv warm-up. So we combine 2 games. One is called Hot Potato and one is called Yes and they work in groups. They get a tennis ball and they have to throw the ball to each other. Each person who gets the ball has to very quickly give an idea for what would be the benefits and drawbacks if people had 6 fingers in each hand? So it's an odd question, and every answer that they give to this has to follow up on the idea that the previous person came up with. So it has to be quick, it has to keep going, it's a hot potato, but it's also this yes and, which is an improv technique to get people going. So the improv technique is a great way to connect the brainstorming principles with the improv principles and see how you can use those improv techniques to expand your brainstorming capabilities. So in the principles of brainstorming are to go for quantity, to withhold judgment, to welcome wild ideas, and to build on others' ideas. And so these techniques, the yes and the hot potato, they allow to avoid judgment, listen to each other, and to pay attention, encourage everyone to participate, and keep everything going so you can go for this wanted quantity. The second part of this workshop is when we engage in bodystorming. So bodystorming is a type of brainstorming that is done in the place of where we as designers envision the interaction with the product that we will design will happen. So here, students are sent to a location where they can easily observe people who are working or studying, and they need to brainstorm for at least 10 ideas for how to address the problem of students wanting to stay focused on working while minimizing distractions. So they leave the classroom, they go out for about 10 or 20 minutes, and while they're doing this brainstorming, they need to role play that interaction that they are brainstorming and take photos. So here are some examples of what this bodystorming looks like. These are photos that students took and uploaded to our Google Drive as they are using their bodies and props that they're finding around them to brainstorm those ideas of how to help students study quietly and minimize distractions in a busy and noisy place. So you can see they're using these props here, the pages. They're using their own bodies to form different physical objects that will help the student focus on their studies. And it's quite interesting to see how creative students get in the process. And so the idea of bodystorming here is to situate the brainstorming in the physical context through a physical experience by combining both role play and simulation in a way that inspires new ideas. And we do this immediately following the improv technique. So their creativity is already flowing from the improv, and now they're taking it into the bodystorming. The final stage of this workshop is to apply a technique called user enactments, where the idea is to explore future design scenarios and how they might have impact on social situations. So they go back to their original bodystorming ideas, and they choose one of them that's the most futuristic that they can, and they need to actually make it happen again with prototyping supplies and craft supplies and build it in the classroom. They only have 15 or 20 minutes to do this. So they have to be scrappy, they have to be quick, they have to make it happen. And also they need to imagine a script that will demonstrate the use scenario and invite students from the other group, so they're kind of switch with each other to enact this scenario. So here are some examples of what this looks like. So again, they're using the furniture, they're using craft supplies, they're using their own bodies to demonstrate these futuristic prototypes that they're creating. And again, part of this user enactments, they're actually seeing in action how examining futuristic technologies might impact those social situations. And in this, they also need to consider different design trade-offs in the process. For example, how much control is the designer going to give to the user from a very loose script to a very high script, because the more control you give the users, the less they might know what to do with it. And the more scripted the scenario is, the users might not have good attachment to what they're supposed to do in this situation. They also need to think about how much fidelity to create into the prototype and the simulated environment, because the more realistic the environment and the prototype is, the more difficult it is to create it. So in our case, students really focus on very low fidelity prototypes, which means that their users need to apply a lot of imagination in applying these scenarios. So at the end of each workshop, we don't just end with running this activity, but we actually have a discussion in light of the activity that students just experienced. Again, thinking about moving, how are we applying these theoretical principles? What do they mean in light of the experience that people just had? How is this positioned in the human-centered design process? Because again, these are very academic research oriented. How can we actually put them in the practical design of products that we're designing, and any strengths, when to apply it, and any limitations, when might this specific method not be applicable in your practice? So I think learning is happening. Here are just a few examples from feedback that I've been getting on my teaching evaluations in the past couple of years. Students enjoy these activities. They think they're fun, but they also like this idea of putting theory into practice, being actively engaged in the class and not just sitting and listening to a lecture or having a discussion, but actually doing it on the as we go, and applying their own creativity as part of the workshops. So with this, I want to end. I want to again repeat how knowing of Trevor's scholarship and creativity and having the honor to work with him in the past few years always pushed me to think about new ways to engage students with research methods, and myself to engage with different research methods at the intersection of technology design and qualitative social sciences. So thank you so much for this opportunity to present this.
Gilly, thank you so much. That was fantastic.
Oh, I want to add one more thing. If anyone wants any of my teaching materials, I hand them out freely. Just ask.
Oh, that's great, Gilly. Actually, maybe if you share them with us, we can put them up on the website, because I'm sure it will be a great resource for others.
Definitely.
That's fantastic. Thank you. So maybe if it's okay, I'll kick it off with questions, because I'm really interested in, I think participatory methods have been something that qualitative researchers have really championed in many subdisciplines. But the theater techniques, I just kept thinking about how can I'm so glad you explained what bodystorming really was, because the term is very curious. But how do you think about taking some of those theater techniques into a research setting? And I wonder if you could just reflect on that.
Yeah, thank you. So the idea of bodystorming in the context of design is designers putting themselves in the shoes of a user with the purpose of getting a better in-depth understanding of the context where users are interacting, and also gaining some empathy toward the users. Now, obviously, this is not instead of doing high quality qualitative methods to gain understanding of your users. Designers and researchers cannot assume that just by going to the context and doing this bodystorming, they know what their participants are experiencing in their everyday. But it is just one way to gain that that understanding and empathy. And it's also a way for the designer to better think about what is going to work and what isn't. Design is always future oriented. How might I change the future by creating certain designs that will create interventions in the world? And so by putting yourself in the context, you can get a better understanding of what might work and might not work in that with the future that you're imagining in that specific context. So for researchers, I think when researchers are putting themselves in the shoes of the participants, and things like, the active participation in experiences that their participants are going through, I think that's a great way to almost practice some kind of theatrical, the master apprenticeship approach, where I'm having this master who's going to direct me, which is another metaphor from theater, and tell me what to do. These are all great ways to apply theatrical metaphors in research. By me being the researcher, I'm being the actor, and I need someone else to guide me to do this, to do whatever you're doing as the master, as the director. You're the expert in this, and I'm learning from you for how to do this. I'm sure there are going to be other ways that you can apply theater techniques in social science research. If anyone else has ideas, I'm always welcome to hear.